This is Democracy Now!, democracynow.org, The War and Peace Report. I'm Amy Goodman.
And I'm Juan Gonzalez. Welcome to all of our listeners and viewers around the country and around the world. We begin today's show looking at Libya. In Washington, the focus remains largely on what happened in the Libyan city of Benghazi on September 11th, 2012, when Ambassador Christopher Stevens and 3 other Americans were killed in an attack. The incident sparked a fierce political fight between Republicans and Democrats over the Obama administration's handling of embassy security and the steps it took in the aftermath of the attack. Since then, congressional Republicans have led 8 separate investigations into the matter. On May 8th, the Republican-led House of Representatives voted to launch yet another congressional probe. Earlier this week, House Minority Leader Nancy Pelosi announced the Democrats would participate.
I could have argued this either way. Why give any validity to this effort? But I do think it is important for the American people to have the pursuit of these questions done in as fair and open and balanced way as possible. That simply would not be possible leaving it to the Republicans. That's why I'm appointing my distinguished colleagues here today to serve on the Select Committee.
This committee will include 7 Republicans and 5 Democrats. Many Democrats have accused Republicans of exploiting the Benghazi incident to scuttle Hillary Clinton's expected 2016 presidential bid. Clinton was Secretary of State at the time of the attacks.
While Washington, D.C. is focused on Benghazi, Libya may be confronting its worst crisis since the NATO intervention that ousted Colonel Muammar Gaddafi in 2011. Fears growing of an all-out war between militias aligned with the Islamist-dominated parliament and forces led by a former general named Khalifa Haftar, who reportedly was once trained by the CIA. Haftar has accused the government of fostering terrorism and is calling for an emergency administration to oversee elections next year. He's a former general under Gaddafi. Haftar says he wants to rid Libya of Islamists and led an assault against militant groups in Benghazi last Friday. On Sunday, forces allied with him took control of Libya's parliament building in the capital, Tripoli. At least 100 people have died since the fighting broke out last week. On Wednesday, Haftar called on the government to hand over power to the country's top judges.
Following the refusal by the expired National Council to meet the people's demands, the High Council of the Armed Forces called on the High Judicial Council in charge to meet the Army's demand for civil and political stability in Libya and asked them to form a High Council to rule the country.
To find out more, we go to 2 guests in Tripoli, Libya. Mary Fitzgerald is a journalist based there in Libya. Her latest piece for Foreign Policy magazine is headlined, "Libya's Muslim Brotherhood Struggles to Grow." And Sharif Abdel-Quddus is with us, independent journalist, Democracy Now! Correspondent, usually based in Cairo, a fellow at the Nation Institute. He's been reporting for the Washington Post from Tripoli for the past 10 days. His latest piece is headlined, "In Libya, Fears of an All-Out War as Islamist Militias Allied with Parliament Deploy in Capital." We welcome you both to Democracy Now! Mary Fitzgerald, let's go to you first. Describe the situation in Tripoli, especially for an audience that is not familiar with Libya right now at all, except perhaps the Benghazi controversy in Washington, D.C.
Well, the mood in Tripoli right now is extremely tense, with most Libyans describing the current situation as the most serious juncture that Libya has found itself in since the ousting of Muammar Gaddafi in 2011. There's a real sense of apprehension here. There's a sense also of people choosing sides. Libya has suffered from increasing polarization in recent months, and that seems to be coming to some kind of crescendo. Several different dynamics that had been roiling in recent months appear to be coming to a head with the events of the last week.
And in terms of the existing parliament, Mary Fitzgerald, it's been characterized as Islamist-dominated, but it has many divisions within it. Could you talk about some of those divisions and especially the role of the party connected to the Muslim Brotherhood?
The National Congress was elected in Libya's first elections in decades in July 2012, and it's important to note that the makeup of the Congress, 80 seats in the Congress were allocated to party lists, 120 were allocated to individual candidates. Of the 80 allocated to party lists, the more liberal-leaning party, the National Forces Alliance, won the majority of seats out of the 80. The Muslim Brotherhood affiliated Justice and Construction Party won the second largest number of seats. But what was key to the complexion, if you like, of the National Congress was the 120 individual candidates. So the headlines in July 2012 that were based on the results from the 80 party list candidates declaring Libya's liberal landslide were extremely misleading. When we saw the 120 independent individual candidates, we saw that there was a far larger component of what is referred to here as the Islamic current than was previously envisaged. This was also bolstered later on by the controversial passage of a lustration law, known here in Libya as the political isolation law, which affected the National Forces Alliance. It meant that its leader, Mahmoud Jibril, was banned from holding political office in Libya for 10 years. This law affected people who had worked for the Gaddafi regime in some form or other. It was extremely controversial because it was a very sweeping law that affected even members of the opposition who had previously served under Gaddafi several decades ago. So all of that created this sense within the wider population here that Islamists, even though there was a perception that they had lost or had not been triumphant in the elections in 2012, that they had managed to dominate the Congress. In many respects, the Islamists within Congress managed to be more savvy political operators. They succeeded more in terms of building alliances and blocs within the Congress. The National Forces Alliance basically fell prey to infighting. It became all but atomized compared to the strong Islamist alliances within the Congress.
Mary